Hey guys, this is Stephanie and I am Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. Hello and welcome to day 23 of the Spring To It Videothon. Today's topic is a series that I wish were just a little bit shorter. I think we all have a series that we thought that could do without one book or two books or more maybe. So if you watch my channel at all, you're gonna know that the first book series I think could be a heck of a lot shorter would be the Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. This is a 13 book series, 13 books, and I just didn't. I think this could be a 3-book series, maybe even 4 if you really want to stretch it. But 13, I was over it. I was over it by the 4th book. By the time I got to the end of the 4th book, I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing every time. This happens. It's always this, 1, 2, 3, that. It is the same formula every book. It is so simple. And maybe if I were 10, I would like them. But I'm not 10 and I didn't like them. So even if they were 3 books, I don't know if I'd like them. Then I'd probably still feel like they're wasting my time because the ending was poo. So I don't know, maybe this was too long by 13 books. Does that count? Basically, the series follows 3 orphans with the last name of Baudelaire and a mean guy named Count Olaf who basically wants to adopt the orphans so he can get their fortune. So he takes all 13 books to find creative ways to disguise himself and steal their fortune. Very anticlimactic. Don't bother. Now, the next series, I may not be fair saying it should be shorter because I actually haven't finished it yet. So far, there are 4 books in the series. I think it's over. And I read the first 3, and it has 9 novellas, and I've read 7 of the novellas. But that series is Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. The thing is, this is a pretty good first book. And I will say that the second book's definitely suffered from middle book syndrome. The second book did. The third book, I felt like was grasping for straws to make this go on longer. And the 4th book I haven't read yet, but I do not have high hopes for it. I want to, but I don't. I feel like this pretty handily could have been a duology. They could have, really nothing in the second book happened, and they could have cut out all the weird stuff in the 3rd book and just made the 4th book the same size as the 1st book and had a duology that people love rather than a quartet that people could live without. That's just my opinion. Basically, this book is following a girl named Amy who gets sucked back to Oz, just like Dorothy, and she lived in Kansas, just like Dorothy, only when she gets to Oz, it is not what Dorothy had told everybody it was. Matter of fact, there is an evil dictator there who is controlling people, controlling magic, abusing magic, and things like that, and it's Dorothy. It's a pretty good first book. If this were a standalone, I think people would like it more, honestly. But the fact it has 2 mediocre books after it and then a 4th one that I don't even know, most people aren't going to read the 4th one. I will. Most people wouldn't. The next series is kind of one of those series I think people either love it or hate it. The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I liked this book. Now, when I read this, it was before I was really on like watching Booktube a whole lot. I stumbled across it at Barnes & Noble, I think, and I thought the cover was beautiful and the synopsis sounded interesting, so I read it and I was like, this is great. And then shortly after is when I started watching Booktube and people loved it, and then I got the second book and I was like, oh, it definitely suffered from second book syndrome. Basically, second book syndrome is like usually the second book or sometimes middle book syndrome in a series, and it's just not as good. And the series probably could have done without that second book or middle book, which is exactly what this tag is about. The second book in this was just not good. It was, the characters were doing uncharacteristic things and what they were doing wasn't very interesting, and it didn't progress the arc plot over the series really at all. Like, I felt like the second book could have been a novella. It's probably 300 pages or so, and it could have been a 60-page novella. And then people have been like, well, it's a novella, so, you know, it can be a little mediocre. It doesn't have to be bang, zip, yeah. So I think she missed the boat there. I haven't read the 3rd one yet. I keep trying to get myself to do it, but it's so big, and I'm like, I don't really want to spend my time, that much time, reading a book if it's going to be just as mediocre as the second one. And then there's one more coming out, and I'm like, do I give up on the series, or do I just push through and be that person that gets the end and is like, hey guys, it's actually pretty good? I don't know. I am undecided, but I did like the first book. Now, the next book, I know a lot of people like this book series. I didn't love the series. I didn't hate it. But I definitely thought that it should have just been 2 books. 2 short books. And that would be the Miss Peregrines Home for Peculiar Children. I actually didn't think I owned this book. And I was on my back bookshelves looking for something else for another tag that I'm doing, and I saw it and I was like, I own that? Why do I own that? I didn't like that very much. So I might unhaul it. I don't know. I might keep it. The first one to me wasn't really that bad. Like, it was pretty interesting. It was very character driven. And the ending wasn't superbly anticlimactic, but it wasn't super exciting either. The second book was a lot of like busy work to me. It definitely was middle book syndrome. Things happened, but they happened slowly. And then after they happened a little bit later, you're like, well, that didn't need to happen. Like, that wasn't pivotal to the plot of the second book. And then you get through the third book and you're like, that's definitely not pivotal to the overarching plot at all. And they spent how many, like 100 pages on this thing that turned out to be nothing. And then the third book as well, there was just a lot of going on in the third book. So I feel like they could have just shortened up the second and the third, saved me a few hours of time, and done this as a duology. I feel like it was an interesting concept, but it just went on way too long. I know a lot of you guys aren't going to agree with me on that, but you know, that's okay. We don't have to agree. It's totally cool. I'm glad you love the series. I did not. There's a 4th one coming out, I think, or maybe a new series, or maybe it's a new series. I'm not 100% sure I'll read it. Yeah. And the last one is probably going to be the one that'll get the most hates, and that is going to be A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. The second book in this series killed me, and I actually talked to people and they're like, oh, the second book was my favorite. And I'm like, well, nothing happened in the second book, and I'm not spoiling anything. In the second book, there's like a tournament, like a magic tournament. So like we magic against each other and who wins. And like that would be really interesting, except they don't go into details about that. They kind of gloss over it, and they're like, and he threw a fire bolt and she threw a glass of water and blah, 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 he won. Like, they just overcap the whole thing, and they don't go into detail with it. They go into detail of one battle, and that is it. Out of the whole book, this is going on, and they go over one battle, and I'm like, yeah, I was interested in what was going on there, not what you were talking about in the book. The book, I was bored. I started disliking characters that I liked in the first one, and then I disliked them because of the second one, and then by the third one, I'm like, I don't care about them anymore. Like, they don't even matter. So I don't think I enjoyed the third book as much as I could have, because the second book was just long-winded and unnecessary. I didn't like it. The third book I was okay with. They had some interesting things, but I feel like you could have added like 50 pages here, 50 pages to that one, and had a duology. And I think there's another book coming out in this series too, but again, there's a part of me that's like, you know, I generally like Victoria Schwab, but there have been some books that she's written I'm like, why did you write that? That wasn't good. You just wasted some of my time. I could have been reading something better. And it's kind of frustrating when you look back at a series and you have severe middle book syndrome. It's like the publishers called them and said, hey, we want you to write 2 more books, and the author says, well, I only have the material for 1. Well, make it 2. We'll make it worth your while. Oh, okay. And I mean, I'm not a writer. I'm sure if I was, that would be super appealing, but I gotta tell you, sometimes you're wasting the paper. And that is all the bashing that I'm going to do today. I am interested to know what book series you guys think was a little bit too long, should have been just a little bit more. Or if one of these, you were like, no, you're wrong. It was so great. Everything was so pivotal. I would love to have that discussion with you down in the comments. Also, look down below and you can find the other lovely ladies that I'm doing this videothon with, and that would be Brews and Reviews, Brooke Clark, Christina's Journey, Danny Buxton, and The Story with Serenity Dawn. Be sure to check them out. I also have all the prompts linked down below so that you too can participate and do however many videos you would like. Be sure to tell us if you do, because we want to watch your videos too. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to come back tomorrow because I will be here. Goodbye!